Now. All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Natalie Eiker. I am the undergraduate student affairs advisor for the Department of Political Science, and I have some amazing senior honors students here. They just turned in their thesis last Monday. So it's pretty exciting time. Yeah. Um, Definitely celebrating that. I'm sure it's a big weight off their shoulders. So the Senior Honors Program, just a little bit before I have these folks introduce themselves, it is a program that you do in your senior year here at UCSD and as a political science major. It is optional, you don't have to do it. It's a very competitive program. We do have some eligibility requirements that we ask of students, and we don't budge from those requirements. So you do need to have senior standing. You need to have at least a 3.6 major GPA. You need to have completed all of your lower division courses in your major, as well as at least 5 upper division courses. And then you also need to have a faculty advisor, which is something that we'll go into a little bit later. But the people who are eligible for this are those faculty members who are like core full-time teaching faculty. And then the people who cannot serve as advisors are those who are not in that category, as well as the professors who are co-instructors for the class, because that would be a huge conflict of interest. And so for this upcoming academic year, so 2021 through 2022, the co-instructors are going to be Professor Clark Gibson and Professor Margaret Roberts. So just an FYI, this is something that we try and know about in advance of sharing out the application for the program, just so you're not wasting your time asking people who can't serve as an advisor. But with that said, definitely pop any questions you have in the chat. And I will have these lovely folks introduce themselves. And let's start with Jasmine.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine. I'm a third year undergrad that I'm hoping to graduate this year. I study political science, international relations, and my thesis was on arms control and verification regimes. And my thesis advisor was Professor Eric Gartsky. Should I popcorn it to someone? Okay, on to Troy.
Oh, darn. Hi, everyone. My name is Troy. I am a third year political science data analytics major. For the senior honors thesis, my topic was on determinants of Russian arms sales. And my thesis advisor was Professor Ritter. Let's go with Georgiana.
Hey everyone, my name is Georgiana. I am also a third year who just graduated, and my thesis was on social media on the impact of polarization in Congress. My senior thesis advisor was Professor Seth Hill, and I will popcorn to Lynette.
I know it. So, hi everyone, my name is Lynette, and I'm a double major in math, scientific computation, and political science data analytics, a fourth year. My thesis is on youth turnout at US presidential elections. My advisor is Professor Kirk Bansek. So, I'll popcorn to Emily.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm a double major in political science, international relations, and history, probably going to end up being US history. And I am a second year transfer, meaning that I'm a fourth year and I'll be graduating at the end of the spring. And my thesis was on electoral violence and its impact on candidate numbers in municipal elections in South Africa. And my thesis advisor was Dr. Karen Ferry. And I'll popcorn to Anthony.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony. I'm a fourth year majoring in political science data analytics. And my thesis topic was on how the Vietnamese household registration system affects the lives of urban migrants in terms of subjective social mobility, income inequality at a time when Vietnam is industrializing. and my thesis advisor was Professor Megumi Nawi.
Thank you all. So, the first question that I know a lot of students have is, why did you choose to pursue the senior honors program? Just given that it is pretty competitive and, you do need to prepare in advance for it, meaning taking the classes, asking the professors, what was going through your mind when you wanted to do this, and yeah, just why? So again, just start off with anyone who wants to go.
I can start this off. Oh, sorry, Lynette, do you want to go ahead?
Go for it, Jasmine.
Okay, you go next. So I think one of the main things is when you take so many political science classes, it almost becomes like a formula. You know what to do to get your grade, and you get out of the class, you do your readings, you take your essays, exams, whatever it is. But the political science honors thesis is an opportunity like absolutely none other that the program offers, because you don't really get the chance to do original research outside of your regular curriculum. Something that I realized over the summer, and I sent like a whole department proposal to Natalie over this, but is I had an interview with a research institute in DC, and I realized that you really need to be like a specialist in something or have significant research experience to literally get pretty much any job in political science when you graduate. So I think those skills are things that you get introduced to at the academic level in a lot of your core classes, but you don't really get to work with them and have that work experience until you take this class or like a relevant research experience, which once again requires that experience to get in. So I think this kind of takes down that barrier to entry for a lot of relevant career positions that you're going to need in the future. Lynette, do you want to go on?
I'll take over. Mine is like pretty much different from what maybe like most of the people will have. Like for me, I know that most likely I wouldn't be pursuing political science in grad school. And I really, really personally like the field. So I do not want to leave any regrets. This is like my last chance doing something on my own. And I've never really had any independent research experience. In the past, I've always served as like an RA, a co-author to like, certain things, like regardless is math or poli-sci. I've never really had something of my own. And I was very, very excited for this opportunity. I actually started planning maybe like around at the end of my third year. So I think it's a good time for y'all folks to like start thinking about it. I'm glad to see all your faces at the panel. Yeah, and I hope that we can really help you figure this out.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think I didn't really plan for this to happen, just because I'm not going to do grad school or do research in that field. But it mostly started with a conversation I had with one of my political science professors, and we were having like a pretty robust discussion on this topic. And I kind of realized there was a lot more like nuance to the subject. So I really wanted to like kind of dive deeper in that. And I guess that was like a pretty good jumping off point for me. I asked him if he knew anyone who would be a good advisor for this thesis, and he wrote a recommendation for me. And so I think like a lot of times it just sort of comes up naturally. I know initially I wasn't planning on writing a thesis, but I realized it would be a good opportunity to sort of cap off my time at UCSD with like a passion project per se.
I really got inspiration from the Research Apprentice program that is offered typically during your third year as a political science student, working with PhD students. I got to write a 25 page paper, so it's pretty lengthy in its own right. And I really hated the topic. I thought it was a bad topic for myself. So I really wanted to try again and write something that I really loved. My PhD advisor was Mariana Carvalho. So she's an expert in political violence. She's a really amazing grad student. And she had suggested that the whole process that I do political violence, and I fought her the whole way. And then I ended up doing political violence for my thesis. So it's a really great way if you don't really love your research project, if you're in that program, or you really want to try to look into something deeper in a course, you really loved, you wrote a small 10-page paper about, you really want to expand on that topic, the thesis is a really great way to do so.
I'll take a stab at it. So I think that there were two major reasons. One is kind of similar to Jasmine in that it's sort of career driven. I thought that it was a really good opportunity for me as someone who really wants to work in policy, in the analysis of it or the policy making process to understand, how the research process works and how, data and policy making can kind of intersect in that regard. And then the other part was peer pressure. I had a couple friends who were doing it and they were like, hey, let's do it together. So I said, you know what? I have time. Sure, why not? And it's a really great experience, not only because you get to do that research, but you get to make some really great friends or continue to have some really good friendships.
I want to quickly add on to something that Emily mentioned in terms of like getting into a career field that you're interested in, or just in general, a topic that you're interested in. So I chose arms control, and that's like a topic that you don't really take classes in. Like there's one class on weapons of mass destruction. And I was realizing to get to work in this industry, and I think you might relate in whatever industry you choose, you can't really get experience in that field necessarily with no prior experience. And it's really difficult to enter pretty much any field that requires like a higher level of learning based on that standard alone. So what I did is like I chose a topic that I didn't really have any internships in because I couldn't get any unless if they were offered to PhD students, which I clearly wasn't. So then after I did this thesis, I applied to an internship on the topic through one of the sources that I actually did a lot of my research in. And I was like, hey, I don't have any internship experience in this field, but I've done 75 pages of research on it using mainly your website for basically like 20 weeks now. So now I'm like in the interview process for that. And I think it's a really good example of how you can get your foot in the door in something that you don't really have access to as an undergraduate student in most cases.
All right. Yeah, so as you all can see, there are a variety of reasons that one can, pursue the senior honors thesis route, and everyone's a little bit different. Some folks want to go to grad school and some folks don't. And even if they want to pursue graduate school, it may not be in political science, but ultimately, I think it really comes down to the research skills that, you do gain through this process. And, if you realize something about yourself, then that's a great opportunity then to take that moving forward. One of the questions that was common as well is it draws upon interacting with your mentor, with your faculty advisor. So, the faculty in our department are incredibly accomplished. They wouldn't be here teaching and doing research at UCSD if they weren't. So what was that like for you all, or for anyone who wants to answer, of finding a faculty member, asking them to be your advisor, and then working with them throughout this process through a pandemic as well? It's definitely, I'm sure, a little bit different for those who would do this program in person. But yeah, anything you all want to share. And again, popcorn, just whoever wants to share.
Yeah, I can start. So I guess I kind of touched upon it earlier, but it started with Professor Ingham, who teaches political theory, and I had done an independent study with him, which is sort of like a one-on-one course, and we had touched upon my topic, but he doesn't specialize in it. He's mostly like a just pure political theorist. So I was talking to him, I want to do a senior thesis project, and he was like, I'll write you a rec letter and see if I can, contact a few of the other professors who specialize in this research, and you can talk with them about it. And so I talked with a few professors on the topic, and ultimately I found that Professor Hill just, like, we vibed the most, I guess. And, he was very, very friendly and had a lot of thoughts about where I could take my thesis paper, because I think at the end, you definitely want to be comfortable with your faculty advisor. They kind of hold your hand through the process, and they really are the ones who help you like grow your ideas. So yeah, and throughout the process, I've never met Professor Hill in person because everything is over COVID or through COVID. But we Zoomed pretty much like every week. He would do like weekly checkups on my paper, and we would sort of discuss where I was having issues. So yeah, I would definitely say don't settle on a faculty advisor just because they're willing to advise you. If you can and you have the time, feel free to like reach out to as many people as possible and find someone that fits your research the best.
I guess I'll take over. So I rate my mentor 12 out of 10. He's like probably the best guy that you could find for mentor for this program. My advisor is Professor Kirk Bensek. So I've taken 2 classes from him before, so I knew this guy pretty well beforehand already, that even like in the whole pandemic situation, everything's on Zoom. I never really found it awkward to talk to him. We sort of set up this bi-weekly meeting schedule that every 2 weeks I'll check in with him right after the senior honor thesis seminar ended. So I found that pretty useful because every time I can just debrief what I did and what the class taught, and he can just lead me from there. So the primary reason that I chose him is that I know from my heart that he's a stat guy, he's a data guy, that we vibe a lot, definitely, because I'm very heavy on the tech side, and I probably want to find someone who's also like sharing similar interests and would guide me a little bit throughout. I know that he wasn't necessarily an expert in the area that I'm working in, because I'm working on American politics, specifically about like voting, campaigning, election. I know that probably like just with regard to the topic, like Professor Kauser or Professor Hill will be so much of a better choice because like they will align more with the topic and also know them personally. But I think it really depends on what you want to get out from your senior honor thesis experience. I think for me is I really want to enrich myself in like the more technical side. So I chose Professor Bensek, and it turned out to be a brilliant choice. He also helped me a lot on the writing side. Like he probably received like more than 10 drafts from me, just like along the writing process. He's a really tough grader, to be honest. I feel like I've never really seen him giving direct feedback. It was always general feedback until like the 5th and 6th draft that like he started to give me like direct comments, because beforehand it was just so unreadable that like I think I really appreciate it though. I think him being strict and maybe like having a higher standard for me really just pushed me further in the whole process. I'm very, very grateful. And I definitely think that choosing your advisor is probably like, I would say 30–40% of this program. So really make a smart decision for yourself.
I guess I can go. So when I was originally trying to choose my professor, I originally asked Professor David Fisk because he had similar interests with me. And I knew him from past classes, and he and I would talk for hours after classes. But he's not part of the core faculty, and he knew this, but he wanted to introduce me to other professors who would maybe share this interest of mine. And that's where he mentioned Professor Naui, because she studies political economy of Japan, but she doesn't do Vietnam. But that's the closest thing that we could try to find. And when I first talked to her via email, I just showed her all the work that I've done, preliminary research. And she said that she was very excited by that. And she, just like that, she decided to become my professor, even though that was my first interaction with her. And I mean, I'll admit, when I first started talking to her, it was kind of intimidating because I felt she was very, very serious and like kind of strict. But that's just like first impressions. But as the work continued on for the next 6 months, she and I would meet once a week, and she was very constructive, try to help me first come up with like a pattern to try to find. And she would also help me try to formulate my research models, as well as how to manipulate the data to reach my research questions. And I don't think I'll get into it now, but she did do me a huge favor that's not really related to the work in this thesis paper, but we sort of springboarded off of it. And I mean, I guess I'll leave it for the next questions, but I'm very glad that I did this paper, especially with her, because it pretty much did change my life for the better.
And I think another important aspect to touch on is just working with who you're comfortable with. I was working with a PhD student who was a woman before. It was my first opportunity working with a woman in a male-dominated field. So I really wanted to make sure that I selected a female advisor going into my thesis, since it was someone that I was going to be working with for several months. And Dr. Karen Ferry turned out to be super lovely. She's super maternal. I had the opportunity to meet with her more, usually weekly, sometimes more than once a week. So she was really, really available all the time. She actually even said like, hey, come to my house and pick up like these papers. She's super nice. So just make sure it's someone that you're comfortable with. I heard a lot of people talking about their meeting times, if there was bi-weekly, weekly, sometimes even advisors meet with you once a month. It just depends on their style, but always make sure that you're kind of on the same page when it comes to styles. I'm someone that needs someone to meet with me once a week for me to actually do work. Some people don't need that. So make sure that you're actually on the same page when it comes to meeting. And I think it'll be a lot better experience when picking an advisor that way.
And we can go on to the next question. So yeah, as you all can see, the professors who are advisors, they are awesome and they really want to be there for students. They wouldn't agree to being an advisor if they didn't want to also work with students in that capacity. So just keep that in mind as well, and make sure that, as we've been saying, that it's a good fit and both of you all agree on similar style of meeting and, what works best for everyone. And this is, even outside of a pandemic too, you want to make sure that the communication is there and that you all are on the same page in terms of expectations as well. And just as Emily shared, it's different for everyone. So what works for one person may not work for another. It's best not to compare. It's really just whatever works for you. So one of the big questions that people had are some of the benefits of the program. So before I ask you all to share those personal benefits for you, I'll just share with everyone that academically, the big benefit is that the two courses that students take as part of the senior honors program sequence, so that's 191A in the fall quarter and 191B in the winter quarter. Those courses, as long as you earn a C- or better, then they can count towards your political science major requirements in the upper division elective component. So much like some of our other department programs, such as the research apprenticeship program that Emily also shared about earlier, the department aims to have these programs that are beneficial for students, but doesn't add an extra burden on you. So meaning it counts for academic credit in some capacity, and whether that's for your major requirements or if you've already finished your major requirements, then units that you need to graduate from UCSD. So that's one of the major benefits. And I know that a few of the folks here have talked about other benefits, but is there one in particular that was really key for you that you want to share, or even a benefit that you didn't realize that you were getting until you were in it, or finished with it? Just again, what anyone would like to say and share.
I can go. I mean, it wasn't a benefit that I expected, but my topic is on the political economy of Vietnam. And when I was working with Professor Natalie, she asked me, would you ever want to spend time in Vietnam? And I said, yeah, like maybe like visit for a week. And she asked me, well, how about a couple months? And I asked what she meant. And she told me that there was a former colleague of hers who studied specifically the political economy of Vietnam. He's a professor at Duke University. And Professor now asked me, would you like to talk with him? Because he works with the United Nations in Vietnam, and he could maybe get you an internship over there. And I just said, oh, okay. And so I talked with him. It was a very fun chat. And then a month later, yeah, got an internship in Vietnam. So that would start in this October, and it'll be for 6 months, where I'll actually be doing things related to my major, so data analytics with data in all 63 provinces in Vietnam. And that's something I could never have expected. But yeah, that wouldn't have happened had I not done this program. And also Professor Nowie did help me get a scholarship to fund that internship. So, I mean, I don't want to get like, say that like, oh, like same thing happened to you, because I just got really lucky. And I'm lucky that she decided to be my thesis advisor. But I mean, I guess you'll never know what happened to you. Yeah, life's funny like that, I guess.
So I guess I'll talk about the other side of the spectrum if you plan to go to grad school. Regardless if your major is going to be political science or not, for me, I'll just talk about like my specific interest. I think I'm very interested in like the interdisciplinary social science / technology, this like little intersection. I mean, it's growing, but like, you know, still like it's more of a niche field as of for now, or like just like the more tech side in general. So like data science, computer science, data analytics. I feel like this program has been extremely beneficial. I'm still deciding which school I'm gonna go to, but like most likely it's gonna be U Chicago's computational social science program. I got almost like a half tuition covered. And the reason that I'm able to get such a good offer is because I had experience working with a U Chicago professor. And how did I get that experience? I talked to him through email. So it was literally just all random. I was searching like school website and all that. And I found this guy and I'm like, oh, cool. He's doing something that is like relevant to my interest. So I shoot him an email. In the email, I talk extensively about my experience with the senior honor thesis. What did I do? What did I learn? And I ended up getting like a really, really prompt reply, almost just like 30 minutes later after I shoot that email. He's like, let's set up a Zoom call. I'm very interested. So we ended up doing that research with him together and ended up getting such a good offer from U Chicago. Still, I'm not really sure that will be my final decision of like which school to go to, but just wanted to offer you guys a perspective of like how much this program could be beneficial to you. And even with like the tech side of things, like for the data science program or data analytics program that I'm applying to, this I think this project definitely teach me a lot with like how do you handle large data sets and how do you deal with all these like causal inference and stuff. I definitely think it's very beneficial, and you get to talk about it extensively in your personal statement. So like no matter what kind of divisions you're thinking about for grad school, but like if you plan to go into grad school, academia, research, I think this is a program that you definitely don't want to miss.
I'll also add on to that because I'm also potentially going to U Chicago for political science, international relations. Yeah, you can get really great letters of recommendation too. I think that's a really great point, especially for grad applications. Those are really extensive and tedious applications to go through. My application, I think, was like 50 pages per school. You get really fantastic letters. I was able to get letters from Dr. Lake, who was my seminar advisor, and then also from my actual physical advisor, Dr. Ferry. Both of them are incredibly accomplished. David Lake is a rock star in the political science realm. So if you can get any letters from either your seminar advisors or your actual advisors, you're going to have a really strong letter when applying to grad school, which is so important to make you stand out with, you know, it's so competitive. It's going to make you stand out quite a bit. So.
Yeah, I want to jump onto that. So instead of grad school, I'm doing law school. So that's another path you can take. And I will say, so right now I'm deciding between Berkeley and Cornell. And like this played a huge part in my interviews for these schools, especially when you're talking to like interviewers. Like this is something I noticed that they got very, very interested in when you include this on your resume. And so I ended up spending a lot of time sort of going into detail on, you know, my research and, you know, why I was passionate about it. And like, I definitely think that that played a role in sort of setting me apart from other applicants, because it really just adds a level of like, you know, I've done sort of more advanced research than the typical undergrad at this time. And also, I will say that like my advisor, Professor Hill, put me in touch with, other professors at different universities who studied similar topics. And so that's been really helpful in terms of not only networking, but like, looking for internship opportunities. And I don't know yet if I want to do like legal academia or something like that. But like having spoken to like law professors now, it's definitely sort of like a very good like starting point, especially when you're applying for research in grad school or in law school, to have this under your belt as something to like sort of demonstrate that it's not like your first time doing research.
Sure. And then, yeah, I think that most of the panel pretty much covered like the really big points that, especially when it comes to like grad school, you get to be very close to your thesis advisors who pretty much very well know you both academically and personally to write you really, really strong recs. Just another kind of thing to think about also is that you'll eventually, in some master's programs and for sure your PhD, you'll be having to write a thesis or a dissertation of some sort. This is a really good kind of introduction to that whole process, that you're not starting from zero if you're entering into those programs. And so, yeah, I think that, for me, when I plan on hopefully going to a master's program, that when that master's thesis comes along, that I'm not, lost, that I know exactly what I'm going to do. And it's all thanks to this program and my advisor.
Another point I'd like to add is that your theses are going to be really developed and quite good. So one point that my advisor brought up is that if you do go into grad school and you do like your topic, you could almost use it as a kind of jumping start going into your either dissertation or thesis. So it's really beneficial that way. It does save you a lot of, kind of swimming in the deep end of the pool, not really knowing where you're going. And you kind of already worked out a lot of those initial problems with your overall analysis.
All right, awesome. See, so it's more than just getting class credit that they all benefit from. So there's a lot more to it, and I think what I heard out of this also is, your faculty advisor is instrumental, and they want to be there for you. Like I said, they really enjoy advising students in these programs. I mean, there are so many amazing political science students in our department. Many of them end up in the senior honors courses. But of course, there are so many out there, in which they choose not to do this because, maybe it's not in line with their aspirations. But really, if you share your dreams and what you want to do with faculty and they take time to listen and talk to you, they will want to open doors for you. And again, you don't have to be that A student. You don't have to be the best of the best. What they look for is integrity, excitement, enthusiasm, and just, a passion for the subject too. So they want someone who, wants to be excited about it, because I also imagine that they may see a little bit of themselves in you as well. Just the student who is excited to move forward with something that is important to them. So with that said, I know that one of the questions people had, it comes down to time. So yes, you are getting academic credit for this class, and you are going to the class this time through Zoom, but also in person when that happens in the future. So a lot of people asked about time. So how much time did you spend on this class and your work in comparison to maybe other political science courses you've taken? Did it interfere with any of your other schoolwork? Did you have a tough time balancing the work that you put in for this class with your other extracurricular activities or work yourself, or even with family responsibilities too? Even if you were applying to grad school, as many of you all did, what did the time commitment look like?
I can start with this. So I kind of pride myself on being a great procrastinator in the sense that, like, I trust myself. If the president right now was like, I need a brief on the war that's going to happen in 30 minutes, I can get you like 15 pages out, like really comprehensive A grade material. But like, that's not something you can do with the senior honors thesis program. And I learned that very quickly. So the nice thing is that the program sets benchmarks for every few weeks with like sending in a literature review or things like that. And the professors, so I had Professor Lake watching over mine in the actual, like the class, and they give really good feedback on it. They meet with you one-on-one to discuss it. You have a lot of opportunity to work through things. So that first quarter, I'm going to be honest, it took like a few times to figure out what my topic was and what I wanted the hypothesis to be. I think one of the weirdest things was just going into this being like, well, I'm going to guess what's going to happen. And if this doesn't happen, then my entire thesis is like 70 pages of like, I don't know what this is saying. So it was kind of a fear that was with me throughout, especially that first quarter. And learning a programming language, things like that are all kind of difficult to do. So I would say the second quarter is when I really tried to streamline that process. And even I think we had 2 deadlines for rough drafts and 1 deadline for a final draft. And those deadlines really help you kind of set up 2 weeks in advance. I would say, okay, I need to get one thing done every day. And I really had to learn time management in my final few weeks. And that helped substantially. I absolutely do not recommend waiting until the last minute because you physically will not be able to do it if you do that. So the earlier you start, the better, but you're going to be confused in that first quarter, and that's okay. You're going to figure it out along the way. And that second quarter is when you should really have those deadlines set, at least for me. I don't know about the other colleagues.
So I will admit I don't have the work ethic of Jasmine. She can outwork me any like at anything, and like I'm totally fine with that. Likewise, I also think that I am the great procrastinator. But this class taught me not to do that. Um, there's definitely a learning curve. Since this is a 2-quarter sequence, in the first part, you're still hammering out your topic if you don't have a very clear one set already. You're figuring out the literature, you're figuring out how to research. If you don't know R or stata, you're going to probably have to learn how to do it. Those sorts of things. And then once you get to the second part, there's kind of a lot of independence or a lot of leeway given to you to kind of manage your own time as best as you can, because your thesis advisor isn't going to baby you and tell you like you have to have this much done. Like it's very much on you. Definitely in terms of the actual amount of work, I don't personally think that it interfered too much with my life, although I do think that in retrospect, I really wish that I had divided up more of how I worked, just to make sure that, I can comfortably, do the extracurriculars and other classes without feeling like I was stressing myself out, or that I was, procrastinating or anything. But in the end, I felt very proud that, I did the best that I could, that I took the last few weeks of the thesis process to get as much done as possible. I don't think anyone can really take that away from you. You know, do your best if you end up doing this, and try to manage your time well. And I think that you'll be proud of however you end it with.
I guess I'll go. So for me, I kind of also started a little bit earlier. So ever since I asked Professor Benzek to be my advisor, he just shoot me a link with the syllabus of the class. And he's like, okay, by like week whatever, you have to do this, you have to do that. And he's like, I advise you to start earlier. And I did take his advice. So I did like finish a lot of things. I would say like maybe like by week 5 or 6, I've completed all that assignment during summer. That has helped me tremendously because I get to expand on my research a lot more. I ended up doing a survey on my own and went through the entire IRB internal review board process. Don't know if any of you are familiar with that. I think people in my cohort definitely are familiar with it because we're talking about it constantly. But then like, I'm sure that like for like those of you who just joined the panel, I know that that sounds like a foreign thing. So basically it's like if you wanted to do data collection from stirred from like just people in general through like online platform whatsoever. You're doing it on human body, or you're just doing like psychological experiment, or even just like a randomized experiment in political science, you will have to, you know, get that permission from the internal review board. So like I think doing everything in the summer has given me so much extra time to get through the IRB process, because you do have to get that reviewed, approved, and like that does take a long time, honestly. And I think it was definitely a smart decision to start early. I think start early, start often is the advice I want to give to every single one of you. If you could prioritize things, definitely like you want to do things as early as possible. So like maybe give yourself like 1 or 2 weeks in advance of like when the assignments are due, if you could.
Yeah, I was actually going to touch upon the summer thing. I remember, I think I reached out to Professor Hill, like I want to say the end of my junior year, and very quickly, like he was like, well, come up with a literature review before school starts, because you're going to hate it if you're writing a literature review during your fall quarter. And I will say that I think that fall quarter in general is just a lot more relaxed than your winter quarter, which some of us touched upon earlier. Because I think winter quarter, you're doing the bulk of the writing. At the end of fall quarter, you're pretty much turning in your first draft. But I will say that there is like sort of like they keep you on your toes through it all. Like you have deadlines you have to meet. So one way or another, you're going to be following a certain schedule that the professor set up for you. But yeah, definitely don't put it off to the last minute. I think my fall quarter, I did not know this, and I was up until like 4 a.m. the night before trying to throw together a really good rough draft, and it sucked. But really, like your first quarter is just a good time for you to sort of hammer things out, figure out what you want to do, and everyone is like just as lost as you are. And you know, in retrospect, towards the end, you'll start to realize, like coming up pretty close to the last deadline, that everything is starting to come together. But it takes a while to get there. But I don't think in terms of like the impact on classwork or any of that, there was a huge impact. I don't know if maybe it's because our year, we also did everything online. So I feel like generally we had more time to figure things out. But I think even in person, as long as you sort of plan things out with your faculty advisor, it shouldn't be too much of a drain on your time if you know how to plan your schedule well.
Great. Okay, cool. So that's really telling for everyone who's still with us that, you know, it's definitely a lot of work, and you do need to manage your time, even if you are the best procrastinator. I know that it happens to all of us at some point or another, myself included. You know, if anyone noticed the time that I sent the link for today. But yeah, you do want to manage your time well if you can. Just going off of what these folks shared, when they talked about doing research beforehand, that can be important, and it can save you a lot of time. I do just want to clarify that as far as like when you can turn in the application for this program, you can pretty much do it once I have shared out about the program, which I did earlier last quarter. So you can do that all the way through the deadline, which is midway in September. So students have until the end of summer session 2 in order to complete all of the courses and to be eligible for the program. So I know that can be a little bit tough to kind of conceptualize and think about. But this is a way for us to make it a really great opportunity for anyone who wants to, you know, take part in it, so that they could get their GPA up, they could finish up those classes, whatever they need in order to move through it. And so if you turn in the application earlier, that's fine. Just how I advise students in that regard is, you know, you can turn it in now, but if you are taking classes through spring and even summer, you do need to be aware of how that may impact your political science GPA, because you are going to be evaluated at the end of summer session 2 after those grades have been submitted. So that's just something I wanted to clear up. And then one last question before maybe we open up to those who are there, if they have any, is let's see, what's a good question? Oh, what is something you wish you would have either done differently if you could, knowing what you know now, or something like a tip that you have to make it easier for students who are thinking about this program? And I know a few of you have said something along this lines, but anything that you can reflect on that you're like, oh, wish I would have done that, or this is just something to keep in mind if you do want to pursue this program.
I'll go. So I think the best advice I can give is do not procrastinate on your writing. Writing does take a long time, and personally, I suck as a writer. English is not my first language, and I definitely had so much struggle when I'm trying to put things up together. The actual research process doesn't really take me as long, probably just 5 to 6 hours a week. It was pretty chill, nice flowing, and pretty much I was just waiting for IRB to get back to me in the entire January. But when I first started writing, I'm just like, holy, this takes so long, and I haven't really had anything down. I mean, I do have the lit review and all that from the summer, but so many things need to be updated. So if I could have done something differently, I think maybe every time I finish one little step, mini step in my research, I would just make a note or write with that, so later on I don't forget what I'm doing. I feel like at the end when I'm trying to put things up together, it was a pretty annoying and to be honest a little bit devastating, a really exhausting process. So if you could really just write as you do research, I know that later on that maybe you shift direction, a lot of your writing will end up being thrown out, but that's better than coming up with things at the last minute. I do think that when we're asking you for the rough draft, I think the deadline I sort of already forgot, but then I think by the time you have your rough draft due, that should be the time when you at least have to have the structure of your paper ready to go.
I would also recommend to speak to a lot of professors within the field. I think a lot of different people can add different insights that your advisor might not even think of. Sometimes your advisors and yourself can get into this kind of hole where, although they are fantastic minds, I think there are different approaches within the department, which is what makes our department amazing. I would have shared my draft probably more to more people, just to get different insight on, especially with violence, because Dr. Furry, she's an expert in South Africa, but not necessarily an expert in violence. So it is a little bit different coming from that approach. Especially the way I speak about violence would be different from myself getting advice from someone an advisor in violence. So I would have to recommend, if you have time, share it as much as you can, send it to grad students, send it to other professors, and see what feedback they can also offer.
Yeah, I think something to add on to that as well is I wish I relied more on the faculty while I was doing the senior thesis program, because I kind of had this mentality where I was like, okay, let me submit something substantial, have a substantial result, something that's significantly relevant, and then go to my advisor and say, look at all that I did. Now, how can I make it perfect? But the reality is that you don't get good results until literally maybe 3 weeks before the thesis is due. So that's where you should not be holding back communicating with your advisors, even if you really weren't able to get anything done that week. You should still have a meeting with them, be like, hey, here's what I'm having a difficult time with. How can I move beyond this problem that I'm having? And so many times that I had this meeting with my professor, I realized a solution to a problem that I had that I wouldn't have really been able to solve if I didn't go to them with unfinished work. So always, always, always bring your unfinished work. And regardless of how much of a perfectionist you are, just talk to them about it, and you're going to be able to go through the process a lot faster and a lot more smoothly if you do that. So, yeah.
I would just like to add, I think the best way to kind of encapsulate sort of my feelings on it is that I wish I was nicer to myself. And not in the sense you're beautiful, tell self-affirmation stuff. I mean, there are days during the thesis where I didn't want to open it because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with this. Maybe I'm just going to take another day, for myself. And I did that a bit too much. I think being nice to myself and realizing that, hey, like it's okay to ask for help. Like in this instance, like you might be stuck on something, like maybe, ask your advisor, like, ask the people teaching the class. I think being kind of honest with yourself that you aren't like a machine who can like do the entire thesis like by yourself is like okay. Um, and I think that's like an approach that you need to have to make sure that you are both getting it done, but also making sure that you are taking care of yourself along the way. I think that's especially important considering the year in which we did this.
And overall, you learn as time goes, and learning the R programming language is not as hard as you think it is. You will figure it out with time. You just got to get through the barrier of being like, I can't do this, and just try it, ask some people for help. Also, you have a TA that knows everything there is to know about doing research, so you will be fine. Troy, you wanted to also raise your hand on this one?
Yeah. Yeah. So no prior research experience here. I am in the data analytics track, so I do have experience with R and that sort of stuff. But those classes don't really teach you like, you know, how to kind of navigate through this whole process. It's kind of hard to kind of take all that I learned from, some coding classes to apply it to my own independent project. Um, I think that the big curve is kind of just getting used to the idea of presenting your own ideas. I think that we as poli-sci majors kind of have a tendency to kind of, not to be mean, but maybe regurgitate sort of what we kind of learned or maybe what we read or skimmed. Um, and so kind of getting over that kind of hump of, this is the idea that I want to present. And then from there, knowing how to present that idea, usually through code, which, you may or may not like already know, is probably like the big hurdle.
And one of the ways that our department celebrates students in this program, and when they do earn a level of honors or higher, is we put their thesis on our website. So it's available for anyone to see. So hopefully in a few weeks, these folks will find out the results of their thesis and what they have earned. Hope they're not stressing about it because there's nothing they can do to change it right now. Um, but yes, hopefully they will all earn a level of honors or higher so that we can highlight them and their success on our website forever. We have theses that go back, I believe it's through 2011, 2012. So for those of you that are just kind of thinking like, what the heck does a thesis even look like? Whether it's qualitative, as Emily pointed out, which is excellent research as well, or more quantitative or a mix of both. We do have examples of that over the years. So something to keep in mind. It's on the same page I linked earlier. It's the senior honors page on our department website. So just wanted to throw that out there.